RINOs, DINOs, dip critters all. December 27, 2019 by Anna von Reitz. For the last several days I have been explaining political basics for neophytes, like the fact that politicians create problems deliberately, because they get rewarded for solving, or appearing to solve, the problems that they create. I told you all about my discovery in college of Democratic Party voting records on key social progress issues, like actual electoral voting rights for blacks and women, like actual natural and unalienable rights being recognized for blacks and women, like freedom of speech, like disclosure of the New Deal, and on and on. In every single case I examined, here is what I found: Democrats loudly decrying the evils of inequality and prejudice against the working class and colored people, while secretly legitimizing and voting for inequality, and at the same time, undermining and taxing the working class to death to buy votes and create slush funds for themselves. Indeed, what I found is that the Democratic Party almost uniquely legislated for inequality and enslavement of the working classes and colored people they pretend to champion. For just one stunning example, when black people in this country stood up and demanded to be treated like everyone else, which I understand to mean that they wanted their natural and unalienable rights recognized, what did the Democrats do? They offered, and passed off, equal civil rights, instead. And equal civil rights can never be equal because they are granted by the Congress and can be taken away by the Congress, whereas natural and unalienable rights are given as a gift to us by nature and nature's God. They pulled a bait and switch, and when MLKJ discovered it, they killed him. I could go on at least half a day and type as fast as I could and show you case after case after case where the hypocrites pretended to champion the rights and interests of poor people, working people, colored people, and in fact, the rats were busily creating and passing legislation to undermine, enslave, abuse, and harm the same groups. Believe it, because it's true. I had no axe to grind with the Democrats when I discovered this stuff. In fact, at the time, I considered myself a Wisconsin Democrat, born and bred. You can imagine how repulsed and disillusioned and disgusted I was back in 1973, and still am. Their party name should be amended to Demon Sea Rats. Nobody should ever vote for them. Ever. Least of all the traditional voting blocs that support them. Recently, I have been asked about Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski and her apparent waffling about the Trump impeachment issues. Well, short answer: the Dems are being identified as the problem, as they deserve to be, and so they are deliberately infiltrating the Republican Party and pretending to be Republicans. Why not? If they can stand there and pretend to champion the rights of the poor while sticking the poor in the back, why not pretend to be a Republican and continue to do the same things? And right here in River City, in my backyard, is a darn good example of this. In answer to the question about Senator Murkowski's waffling, Lisa Murkowski is a RINOs RINO, Republican in name only. Her dad was U.S. Senator before her, a banker, and husband to Nancy Gore, as in Al Gore. Same family. Related to the Daley clan in Chicago. She's no more a Republican than FDR. People are so stupid to elect these shills and then think that they are going to keep their word and act according to the advertising. I told everyone what I discovered about Democrat voting records. No? Talk one way and vote the other? Time after time after time. Same thing with Lisa's voting record, too. And when I called her on a particularly evil example of this in action, all the brain-dead Republicans in Alaska flew at me like crows on a roadkill. You would have thought that I had killed their dog and maimed their cat. They are so dumb that they trust in the name Republican instead of paying attention to the fact of the voting record. No wonder the voters are confused, right? You've got Democrats claiming to be Republicans and loudly proclaiming their support for workers and poor people, and then creating legislation that undermines and enslaves both. We all have a right to feel confused, and betrayed, and angry to the bone. And thanks to Democrats camouflaging themselves as Republicans and Republicans being too dumb to ferret them out, we have this same kind of game going on and being promoted by what appear to be members of both political parties. That is, Lisa isn't really a GOP senator waffling about Trump's bogus impeachment charges. She's a Dem in GOP clothing waffling about Trump's bogus impeachment charges. Everyone needs to wise up, but nobody needs to wise up more than the traditional Democratic voters. Recently, there has been an awakening and many Democrats have joined the walk away movement and exited, stage left, the Democratic Party and voting bloc. I would suggest that a run away movement would be more appropriate. Run like an antelope away, and keep a sharp eye out for Dems pretending to be Republicans, too. Here's how I would begin the hunt on Nancy Pelosi's House seat. I'd take a photo of her big walled mansion, and I'd make a one-page leaflet of it, and here's what the leaflet would say: "Here's where Nancy Pelosi lives. You really think she represents you?" And I would paste and plaster that leaflet all over her filthy, dirty, run-down, miserable, low-class, semi-slum voting district. Hello, slum dwellers. You think this woman is one of you? You think she cares? Really? Let's examine that belief. And then I would go door to door and actually talk to people. I'd give them a copy of the Frankfurt Plan of the cultural Marxists and ask them to look around at their world and her voting record. I'd ask why, after decades of supporting Nancy Pelosi, and despite her rise to power in Washington, D.C., conditions in her home district have only, and steadily, gotten worse. Fewer decent jobs, more decayed housing, more garbage in the streets, but trillions of dollars belonging to U.S. taxpayers being spent in other places on other things. And all this being done on your ticket? Still believe that Nancy Pelosi represents you? No, she does not, and Lisa Murkowski doesn't represent me. So why are they still in Washington, D.C., pretending that they do? Mainly, it's the gullibility of Republicans allowing RINOs in their party and American voters in general that allows this situation to go on. People don't seem to understand that it is their money being spent in D.C. and that it's being spent on everything and everyone but them. Help support this work by visiting www.annavonreitz.com and look for the donate button. Links to this article and more can be found in the video description box.